Welcome everybody. I'm so delighted that you're able to join us for this 9th community conversation around United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, Peace, Justice and Strong Institutions. I'm the Foundation's Global Goal Ambassador for what I think is a really important and prescient goal at this time within our local communities. And I think there's a fundamental question about how we as human beings live our best lives, duly respecting the right for others to lead their best lives too, in a safe and peaceful world. And I think Global Goal 16 fundamentally is about the preservation of human dignity as people go about their everyday lives. And as the United Nations rightfully states, if we're to build a safe and peaceful world, people everywhere need to be free of fear from all forms of violence and feel safe as they go about their lives, whatever their ethnicity, faith or sexual orientation. Conflict, insecurity, weak institutions and limited access to justice remains a threat to sustainable development in our communities. And in 2019, the number of people fleeing war, persecution and conflict exceeded 79.5 million, the highest level ever recorded. 1 in 4 children continue to be deprived of their legal identity through lack of birth registration, often limiting their ability to exercise rights in other areas. And we know that the COVID-19 pandemic only threatens to amplify and exploit those fragilities across our world. And in order to build a sustainable world with peaceful, safe and inclusive communities, we need to put human rights and justice at the heart of everything we do. And within our local communities, this means residents being able to be involved in participatory and representative decision-making across all public institutions, and ensuring that the local population has public access to information, protection of freedoms and access to justice. Northamptonshire Community Foundation funds a number of community groups and charities to help contribute to this global goal on our doorstep. This includes projects supporting migrants and refugees, community law services, rights and equality councils, community safety initiatives, citizens' advice, and advocacy and residents' councils representing local people's interests and concerns. Some example projects include Northampton Town and Sanctuary, of which Danielle, who's joining us today, leads on. And this group has recently received funding to deliver a peer education programme to help train young people and also to develop a youth-led conference. Northamptonshire Rights and Equality Council have received a grant to reach out and support people experiencing employment discrimination as a result of the public health crisis. And the Good Loaf Community Interest Company is working with vulnerable women to help them build safe and well lives outside of the criminal justice system. We also, as a community foundation, work alongside the High Sheriff of Northamptonshire with a dedicated panel to deliver funds into the community that create stronger and safer communities and reduce crime and antisocial behaviour, with a current focus on tackling serious youth violence. We're also, I'm delighted to say, we'll be launching a refugee welcome fund, especially to help support the resettlement of Afghan refugee families into Northamptonshire who are fleeing persecution and violence as a result of decades of conflict. We must all work together to implement lasting solutions to reduce violence, deliver justice, combat corruption, and provide inclusive participation at all times. And here are just some simple actions we can all take as residents of Northampton to help build peace, justice and strong institutions. We must all exercise our right to hold our elected officials to account, share our opinions with them about how to build better communities and safer communities. We have a right to exercise our right to freedom of information, and we can help promote inclusion and respect towards people of different ethnic origins, religions, gender, sexual orientations, or even just different opinions. Human dignity means human rights. This means everyone has a right to be valued and respected. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was drafted after World War II and published in 1948 in hopes of preventing atrocities that happened during that war from happening again. This global roadmap is still as relevant today as it was then. We must always speak out when we see injustice to help build a peaceful, safe and inclusive world. For in the words of the late great civil rights activist Martin Luther King, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. I'm really delighted to introduce our panel today. Hassan Shardiel, who is an NCF trustee, Hasna Hock from Northampton Bangladeshi Association, and Councillor Danielle Stone from Northampton Town of Sanctuary. Welcome to you all, and I'm delighted that you will share in this community conversation. So to kickstart the proceedings, there's just a question I want to ask each of you respectively about your work here within Northamptonshire to help build peace, justice, or strong institutions locally. And this could be in your role working for a charity, as a donor, or just even in a personal capacity. So I'll go over to Hasna first. Hasna.
Yeah. I've been working at the Northampton Bangladeshi Association for the last 9 years, and I've realised there's a lot of discrimination takes place, especially man and women levels of treatment. And I think what we need to realise is that the world is such a big world that we need to treat everyone equal, and that's what we need to work on a lot. It's a cultural thing as well. Obviously, we need to develop our people in a very positive role model for our community. That means providing a service to young people, service to single parents, which we lack a lot at the moment, because there's lots of youth-led stuff and there's lots of work out there for elderly. But what we're missing out on, I've noticed, is actually the young parents who are actually really struggling. There's lots of single mothers out there. We don't realize it, and they need help, they need support, and they need people like us and yourselves to support them, empower them. And I think we don't see it. We just see sometimes what's front of us. When we open the door, we just think this is it. These people need help. Lots of communities need help in different fields. And I mean, I've experienced so much working in this field, in the charity field, and it just made me realize that we need to understand. I mean, I understand, but a community, different people in a community, that we are all different in our own ways. But we have to deal with this as a community, and people don't realize. They think, oh my God, it's shame, we can't talk, we can't. No, we have to talk about it. It's happening. And we, as a community, like you said, Rachel, and you're the chief, I'm sure you've come across lots of projects that are dealing with this, but sometimes we're not aware and we don't know what's going on around us. We know that it's out there, but we don't know where. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hasna. I thought you made some really prescient points there about the need for collaboration and for people to understand people's unique and different circumstances and life experience, and help connect them with the resources and support that they need. We as a team at the Community Foundation are really grateful for the work that you're doing to help provide safe support for young mums, and also to help build understanding across different communities. So thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking me on.
That's okay. Danielle.
Really interesting. I'm a counsellor because I see political activism as a change mechanism. So for me, changing the political structures we inhabit is really, really important, but it's by no means sufficient. So in order to bring change about, I also recognise the need for grassroots movements. And it's the grassroots movements that legitimise, if you like, political change. So for me, that's really important. And I've always tried to work with groups who are the least represented, or who've got a lot to offer and a lot to say, but whose voices are not being heard. And so we set up you mentioned the Youth Summit. We set up the Youth Summit 3 years ago. This year will be the 3rd annual conference we've got in Northampton, run by young people. And I cannot tell you how extraordinary that is. You know, I knew in my heart of hearts 3 years ago that young people were perfectly capable of running their own conference, But, you know, heart in my mouth, was it going to work? Yes, it did. Was it brilliant? Yes, it was. Have we all learned a lot from them? Yes, we have. Now we know what some of their political priorities are. I can champion that in the council chamber as well. So really, really important. But the two other groups that I work with a lot, one is a campaign called the Africa Centre. So we've got very large groupings of different African people from different countries in Northampton who've decided to put aside their differences of religion or culture or tradition, or, you know, some of them are in conflict in their own countries. They've decided to put that aside and fight together for an Africa Centre. So I'm involved in that. And I helped set up the Northampton Town of Sanctuary 6 years ago. And that was because we had a very hostile environment into which young unaccompanied asylum seeking children were being introduced, and it wasn't acceptable. And so we've got Northampton Town of Sanctuary. We encourage organisations to become organisations of sanctuary. So at the minute we've got the university, the theatres, a couple of churches, and I hope the town council going for accreditation as places of sanctuary, meaning that they will welcome and nurture refugees within their institutions. So I think all of that is really important. And I sense all the work that we've been doing collectively in that grassroots movement building way is having an impact. I don't think Northampton is the same hostile place it was 6 years ago. I think I see changes, really, really important changes.
Thank you, Danielle. I think you made a really important point there about collaboration and providing a platform for those unheard voices, particularly those within our communities who feel, as you say, excluded and marginalised. And I think you made a really important point about the role of civil society. We can't just rely on our political structures. Our local civil society creates our grassroots movement, and we've seen recently the development of an anti-poverty strategy, which is, I think, a tribute to the power of the charitable sector to come together and make a change. I think you made a really important point there about not just having a space or a platform for a voice, but actually a physical space. So a physical space for communities to meet and feel safe and to develop networks, support, and take their concerns forward. Thank you. Hassan.
Yeah, again, a more formal apology to everybody for my late attendance and my slightly croaky voice as well. The question is, what do I do from a local activity point of view that might support peace, justice and strong institutions? Before I talk about me, I just wanted to say that actually Danielle and Hasna are good examples of people who locally work and have been working towards, you know, these goals for many years, and with sincerity. That I see my community work that I do, that sometimes there are people who are genuinely and sincerely committed to a task, and some people are just sometimes just there for the ride. And so that, you know, that is something which should be recognised and applauded. And we're lucky in Northampton that there are a few of those gems around that will do it for the right reasons. So, and you know what, I should say, I mean, Danielle was through the Town of Sanctuary, and people like Husnain as well have been involved. Before it was fashionable to care about refugees, all of a sudden it's become very fashionable to jump on that bandwagon, but these guys have been doing it for many, many years. So again, a nod and a recognition of that. What do I do in terms of these specific goals locally? What Danielle's mentioned, I mean, community activism, I suppose. I've always been involved in community work. And sometimes from a sad standpoint, I come from the Pakistani Muslim community, and whenever I had to introduce myself in council meetings and police association meetings and various other places, I have to sort of say it, because we haven't got a community. We haven't got a formal community association. The Pakistani community has not got a formal association. We haven't got a building. We can only look in. We're sort of pride and also a bit of jealousy at the Bangladeshi community who've progressed so well. So, you know, getting my own community involved, trying to do more, I've done, but I wish more would. So that's what I do. I'm involved in various things across the county that, you know, that try to achieve that small way. And then the more obvious things that I do in terms of peace, justice, and strong institutions is obviously I'm involved with a law firm in the town. Now, I could have stayed at the firm I was at in Birmingham when I qualified and got a nice pension and, you know, become a partner and all the rest of it. But I actually chose to come back to Northampton and set up a practice with my best friend and provide services to people in this town. And also more recently, the past 6 or 7 years, obviously I'm sitting as the assistant coroner for the county. So those are the obvious things that I do in terms of supporting peace, justice and strong institutions locally. And before we move on to the next thing, I just wanted to sort of put this into some sort of context. When you look at peace, justice and strong institutions, they sound like very vague concepts, very academic concepts, but actually having peace, justice and strong institutions, ask the people from the countries that don't have those what they mean. And I go back, I'm unfairly picking on Pakistan, but that's the country I'm most closely affiliated to. No, we don't have peace there quite often. We certainly don't have justice there, and we don't have strong institutions. And so if you ask the people who live in that country how they feel, you know, what happens when something goes wrong, who do they go to? You know, if somebody is unlawfully, taken over occupation of their land, what do they do about that? Who do they go to? The police are in on it. Can't go to the police. If the local politicians are getting a cut, you can't go to them. If the courts have got 10 years of backlog, you can't go to them. So what do you do? So that's why it's important to have these things, you know, and that's why it's so valuable. They aren't these vague concepts. They actually do mean something.
Thank you, Hassan, and thank you for your reiteration of applauding the work that Hasna and Danielle have been doing over many years within our communities. And it's so important to have those community leaders who, as you say, don't pick up a social issue just because it's fashionable at the time, but do it for the right reasons and the right principles that pertain to this global goal. Also, thank you for sharing your life experiences and again reiterating that the lack of physical space that some communities aren't able to have, which doesn't allow them the voice and platform that they rightfully should have within our localities. And thank you for sharing the legal justice work that you do within our communities to uphold strong institutions. And dare I say, you're a community leader yourself in that respect. And I think you made a really important point about strong institutions and the fact that if you lack these, then what do you do? And holding back the wave of corruption that we see across the globe and locally is so important for allowing people the right to justice, which leads, thank you very much, neatly onto my second question with a quote that relates to the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," which I think resonates with what you were saying, Hassan. So to the panel, with further resources, what local solutions would you like to see being funded in relation to this global goal? And is there any specific immediate needs you think are an urgent priority for peace, justice and strong institutions? Over to Hasna.
I think we need to obviously look at our elderly a lot, because not just our elderly, you know, for example, like the recent event that took place in Afghanistan, we have 9,000 people that's coming to UK. Who needs support? That's a global issue, isn't it, Rachel? And we need to look at these things. If you look at, that's my granddad's age, where they came, they suffered, they've experienced so much, but we don't want them to suffer. Like 9,000 people came to Northampton, from what I heard, 9,000 people from Afghanistan came from Northampton who need shelter, who need support, who need to learn English, who needs all the care that we could give them. So we need to make sure the activities are there available, the ESOL classes, like self-care classes, you know, stuff like that. You'll be surprised, there are people that don't know how to cross the road, and we had to teach them how to cross the road. You would think these things are like almost common sense, but it's not, because the countries that they've come from, they don't get taught. It's not something that we know or they know. It's something that we have to give them education. Education is so important, far and beyond. I'm saying it because I've experienced it. I've had ladies where I had to hold their hands and show them where to press the button on the traffic lights, because they don't know what these things mean. They just look around and they just think, if there's no cars coming, I could cross the road. It's like with anything, isn't it? That's just an example. If we don't show them the guidance and the support that's out there, there is so much out there, but we don't know actually. We're not aware of everything. I obviously deal with lots of public people. I deal with elderlies, I deal with youth clubs, I deal with single mums, and I do a lot of my own work as well within the charity, with other charity work. And I've realized there's doors that are closed that we don't actually know. I think we need to actually be more assertive what's going on, and accept the fact that we are all different again. I know I'm saying kind of similar stuff, but we don't realize this. Like I said, I had to help a lady how to cross the road, and you would think she's lived here for 20 years. Why doesn't she know this? But she has never been taught. And it's just the same thing goes for the people that's come from different side of the world. They have not been taught. We would assume in our head that it's common sense because we've been brought up like this, haven't we? We've been taught by our parents, but they've not been brought up. Road accidents happen a lot, doesn't it, Rachel? It's huge, but again, it goes back to training, education, guiding them the right direction all the time.
Thank you, Hasna. I think you made a really important point about, in terms of building peaceful and safe communities for everybody, we need to celebrate diversity, recognise different life experiences, different cultural experiences, but celebrate those, not try and shoehorn people into a particular way of life within our plural democracy. And also provide welcome and resettlement toolkits and roadmaps so that people can feel safe and well in their community. So I'm getting a sense of that we need resources and we need services that support language and education for those resettling into our communities to make them feel safe and welcome, and also to take note of the different age needs as well, from an aging population to a younger population, and being able to make them feel that they can access the resources and support that they need in order to live a safe and well and happy life within our communities.
Yes, Rachel, that's exactly what I was trying to say, but I was just saying it a different way.
No, you said it much better than me. Just in my role as facilitating this, I have to summarise just to sort of resort back. But thank you, Hasna.
Very welcome.
Over to Danielle.
There's a number of things, Rachel. I think I want to talk about some of the campaigns I'm involved in, but before that, one of the most pressing needs of all the people that I work with is access to justice and access to quick justice. So we have got a huge problem with the Home Office. I keep being asked, the young people I work with keep asking me, why is it taking so long? They're waiting. They should be waiting no longer than 6 months for answers to their applications for the right to remain. It's taking some of them up to 2 years. In that 2 years, they become really ill because of all the uncertainty, puts more pressure on the health service and all the other services, and it isn't fair. It really and truly isn't fair. The family courts are not functioning as well as they should be. We have children in care who need more support. They're not getting it in a timely way because the courts are just not functioning very well. So the Home Office and the courts need to be sorted out. But in terms of locally, the campaigns I'm involved in, there are 3. One is to create a refugee centre. The work I do has grown so huge. We now need a proper base where people can come and feel safe every day of the week. I've been working with the African community. They are desperate for an Africa centre. where all the different African groups can come together and share their expertise and support each other in a myriad of ways. They've got a wonderful business plan to do that. And then the other one is we've got agreement through the local authority that we need a youth centre. So a youth centre is not a youth club. It is a meeting point where youth providers and the youth can come together to develop a strategy for empowering youth and providing youth for exactly what it is they need to keep them strong and to help them become really productive citizens and make a big contribution to our town. So those three things for me are really, really important. And I think we're looking at a situation now where the Refugee Centre and the Africa Centre are coming together to see if we can work together for one space that we can share, because a lot of our, not all our refugees come from Africa, but a huge number do. And as they're children, and as they become adults, they need communities to be socialised into. And the Africa community wants to help support that. So those are the things, you know, on my campaigning schedule at the minute.
Thank you, Danny. I thought it was a really important point that you made about access to justice and the Home Office. We know that there's been a delay in the resettlement programme and the funds being devolved into communities to do that immediate urgent work. And I think you provide an insight into the pressure again that grassroots movements can place on local governments and otherwise to help build the access to justice that people need within their communities, whether that be the family courts or recourse to public funds, for example. I think a point that you flagged up again is the need for physical community assets for people to build a platform to work from so that they've got a space to come together safely, work out the needs of their communities, and then communicate that to local government and collaborate with other organisations and charities to build alliances to make sure people get the support and space that they need, whether that be specific cultural communities or young people as well. And it's really great to hear about the collaboration across the Refugee Centre and Africa Centre, and we look forward to hearing more about their development and progress. Hassan.
Yeah, hi. So this is a question about resources for local solutions. Number one on my list was refugees, which Hasna has covered already. The other two or three things I wrote down are basically supporting and promoting the rule of law and democracy. And again, it's such a vague concept which nobody really has any connection with or emotional connection with anymore. And when you lose respect for democracy, MPs get killed. And when you lose respect for the rule of law, judges get attacked. And you know, those are the things which we need to have a stable and prosperous, safe and happy society. So they mean something, and we've lost that. You know, we hear about the rule of law, but who actually respects it anymore? What does it even mean? Who respects, and what are democratic values? What do they mean? Where's our connection with them? So those are possibly national things, but I think they're local as well. I think they are. I mean, what respect have anybody got for their local lawyer, their local councillor? And if there isn't any at that level, then there won't be any at national level. But these are important functions. So I don't know how you fix that. I don't know if it's an urgent priority, but possibly it is in light of the events of this week. Other things in terms of local solutions and resources for local solutions. Something that's going on at the moment is the police are desperately trying to recruit people from a more diverse background, and they are having mixed success. So, you know, that's a local initiative at the moment that's going on. You know, if we could get more, Asian and people of African Caribbean descent and other minority communities into the police, it might be that the work that they do, the respect that people have for the police will alter, in turn leading to stronger institutions and peace and justice. So, but how do you get them in? And there are some people who are going in and not having a very positive experience and leaving. So it's not actually just about recruiting, it's about retaining. So that's a local thing that's going on at the moment, which it's, the police are trying to do this, but it's a really tough thing to do. Is there a way of supporting that, improving that process and experience? The other thing I noted down was just legal aid. Again, it's a societal problem. It's a cultural shift. If you ask people, what was their top 3 priorities for public policy and expenditure, do you think that any of them would say paying lawyers? None of them would. It would be healthcare, it would be anything, it would be defence, it would be some of those other things. Nobody would list legal aid or paying lawyers. And because of that, legal aid's been withdrawn. In all of the areas where it's needed the most, family courts, housing law, you'll be lucky to get a lawyer. And I act for landlords in housing possession claims. And I can't remember the last time I had a solicitor against me. You'd have the tenant turning up on their own, sometimes with the assistance of community law services, but not with qualified solicitors. So there is an inequality of arms straight away. And they're there to try to save out their home and retain a roof over their children's heads. And they're not, that the state does not think it's worthy for them to have legal representation. So again, national problems, but they have an impact locally, and if there's local ways of supporting, then we ought to be doing that. So those are 2 or 3 just examples of things and there are many others, but I mean, this is only an hour's session. We'd probably need a full day.
Just to make you aware that next year we're going to be having a local UN summit that will be convening huddles around these goals of those with concerns around them, to give the opportunity to have much more in-depth and broader conversations. But I want to pick up on a really important point I think you've made there, Hassan, which is somebody's quality of experience of justice should not be determined by how much they earn. And I think that's something that comes strongly through what you're saying. And therefore, the access to justice is restricted by people's income. And I think you made a really important point about legal aid, because we know that there is a leaning on services such as community law that can only provide, based on their limited resources, a sort of restricted set of services and support, essential as they are. We've started to see the emergence of renters unions like Acorn, which emerged from Bristol to help people be aware of their rights and responsibilities. So coming back to your point about the erosion of respect for law and democracy, I think there needs to be perhaps community initiatives which make people aware of their rights and responsibilities, so they can navigate the justice system, they can navigate situations where they may be at risk, for example, such as losing their home, when people sadly experience financial hardship due to all sorts and manner of circumstances. And also with the police, perhaps there's an opportunity for us to contact them to help maybe do some targeting mailing through local charitable organisations, community groups and communities, to help the diversification of the police force, so that police force represents more people in the community and people feel safer as a result. I think you're right that some of the points you've made are obviously national policy issues, but we know through the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt the difference a small number of citizens can make in the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And often some of those answers do emerge from the grassroots and not from top down. So we move on to our next question to the panel, which Global Goal 16, I believe, is a goal which really emphasises that compassion and a strong moral compass is essential to every democratic society. So how can we work together to promote more peaceful and inclusive communities here on our doorstep in Northamptonshire? Over to Hasna.
Thank you. I think as a community, obviously as a community, we need to work together. We can't be fearful of other communities. Like, what if, I'll be honest, the main issue is funding. We are all scared they're going to take my funding. They're going to find out what my project is. They're going to find out what this is. We, as a Northampton Bangladesh Association, try to work with various groups and projects. And we found the hardest thing was, I felt like they wouldn't let us in. We want to work in partnership with you. We don't want to take your funding away. I want to refer people on to you. So, because we can't cope with the pressure of work we have here. We see about 20 clients a week, and we only have one person. And sometimes they just knock us back. I feel like they don't want to see us because they either feel when we want to have meetings with them, I don't want to name an organization, they don't want to have a meeting with us because they feel like we're going to take their funding away, we're going to copy their project, and that funding won't be available for them. Sometimes it's not even about money, it's about people's lives. I'm human, and that's another human sitting next to me, and we want to help each other. It's not about money, because sometimes that's all it comes down to. We are all fighting for the same pot of money. Yes, I agree, we are all fighting for the same pot of money, but sometimes we need to put money to one side and actually help our community. People come to us for help, not because they have nothing better to do, because they need support. They don't know where to go. I refer about 5 people a day sometimes to Citizens Advice Bureau, and I could refer them to other places like Rape Centre, and there's Sunflower Centre. These are actually open services, but there's other services available. And I said to them, let's work together. But I feel like the doors are closed. I email people. I send emails to different companies. I don't even hear back. And we talk about projects. Let's work together. We are all in the same boat. We all need money. I get that. But we've got people that it may be beneficial for you, because there's either communication barrier, we can't help them, we haven't got the manpower, there's no money available. We'd love to recruit someone else, we haven't got the money to recruit someone else. So we need to refer them on, but sometimes the doors are closed because we are all fighting over money sometimes, we haven't got the manpower. And that's one of the biggest issues I've seen, Rachel. We are fighting over projects, similar projects, but we're not willing to work in partnership.
Thank you, Hassan. I think you made a really important point, and I think it's a key learning, particularly for a lot of funders across COVID-19 pandemic, is we need to be less precious about funding and more focused on outcomes and impact for communities. Yes. And I think we're starting to change our culture as a funder. We like to think that we have close relations, but we know that there's always room for improvement. So we've been providing some rolling programs for instant, easy access to funds. But I think your point is really prescient, is that we need to be less precious and competitive about access to funding and resources and look to collaborate. You know, there is strength in numbers, and actually it helps ease each other's workload when you're trying to support a number of people and you don't necessarily have the capacity or people power to support everybody fully. Being able to refer somebody, being able to share resources, being able to make sure that people get the access to the support that they need will help build peaceful and inclusive communities. So I really take your point that there needs to be, in order to do that, a call for better partnership working, and what you were quite rightfully saying is more sincere partnership working. We know the funding landscape can be quite barren, particularly for small frontline groups, and the way forward is to break down those barriers. And we're hoping through some of the actions from our community conversations. We saw the emergence from our first community conversation of a Poverty Truth Commission locally, which has fed into the anti-poverty strategy locally. So we will be banging the drum and shouting for more partnership activity and collaboration. And I really kind of endorse what you're saying there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle.
Really, really interesting. There are 2 things. One is, I think people need introducing to each other. There was a wonderful project in Corby 12 years ago now, where there was a lot of incomers from different parts of the world. And Corby wasn't a very receptive, welcoming place. And so there was a project set up to help train the settled community receive the incomers, and in the doing of that they learned all about their own civic life in a way that they hadn't known it, and they were taught to teach English. And these are white working class people receiving people from Africa and people from the Middle East and people from Pakistan and Bangladesh, and it worked. And that whole idea about we shouldn't be strangers to each other, we don't ever get properly introduced. And I think when we don't, all kinds of stereotypes and mythologies develop and people become afraid of each other. So I think community organising and community establishments where people can feel safe with each other, really, really powerful, really, really powerful. But the other thing that I think is desperately needed, I think we need to move away from the statutory services treating all of us like Cinderella services, where that they can pick up or leave as they wish. We can be the flavour of the month one year and then drop the next. It's just such bad practice. And one of the things that I've been fighting for in the council is for the voluntary sector to be used in a much more strategic, planned way. So we are not looking at crumbs from the table, but we are at the table. We're at the table when all the issues are being discussed. We're at the table when the services are being designed. We're at the table when the funding is being agreed. Now, the funding can come from lots of different areas, but I think the voluntary sector needs a proper place at that table. We shouldn't be hanging around in corners waiting for crumbs. We should be part of the design and then the co-delivery of all our services.
Thank you, Danielle. I often think of the voluntary and community sector as the unappreciated wife of local governments, doing a lot of the hard work, but getting none of the credit. And I think you made a really prescient point about the VCSE isn't there just to do additional services as and when funding becomes available happenstance through local government. They actually have the voices and the local intelligence and the understanding and needs of their local community. So they should be part of that strategy to build peaceful and inclusive communities and society. And I thought your point about community organising is so important. We need the space and time to listen to other people's stories and see them, as Hasna said, as human beings and as people with distinct life experiences. Some of those experiences might be shared, some of those experiences might be very different. And that can help break down the barriers of privilege, where some people perhaps have had relatively well and safe and happy lives, but have no understanding of perhaps somebody else's distinct journey in life, which has caused perhaps a myriad of issues and problems and unfortunate circumstances that they've had to deal with. So in order to build peaceful, inclusive communities, taking your point away about community organising and supporting and resourcing that, but also space and time to connect and introduce people, to listen to people's stories, and also for the VCSE to be treated as a strategic partner, not just as an add-on. Thank you, Danielle. Hassan.
Yeah, hi. How do you promote peaceful and inclusive communities? I think I don't know the answer to this one, so I was just going to pass. But before I do that, I've only got a couple of observations. One is, I mean, nobody's born racist. Okay, something happens along the way. Nobody's born hating refugees. Something happens along the way, and you end up at that place. And how do you change that? I don't know. The three things I wrote down were from my own personal experience, and I don't know if they apply to everybody. How did I stay away from those things? Why do I love my community and all the different people within it of all different sort of backgrounds and beliefs? Family, faith, and education. Those are the three things which gave me my moral compass. I don't know how you promote that. How do I promote family to people? How do I promote faith to people? Any faith. It doesn't have to be my faith. How do I promote education to people? I don't know how I do that. So I come back to my conclusion, which is I don't know the answer to this question. There is, however, one thing which jumps out at me in terms of what will make the problem worse and needs to be checked. What's the one thing which I see that is working against peaceful and inclusive communities and needs to be stopped in its tracks? And that's the politics of division. This is now the popular way to get elected. If you can run on a message that says that the foreigners and migrants are taking your jobs, and actually that's why white working class people are being left behind, and that resonates with people and they get voted in and they get elected, then that is a message that will be perpetuated and strengthened. And that is rife at the moment, nationally, internationally, and Danielle will be in a better position to tell me how strongly it's taking hold locally. But unless that politics of division is stopped, we will never have peaceful and inclusive communities.
Thank you, Hassan. I think there's a really important point there about combating misinformation, propaganda and hate speech. And I feel some of the work that we can do locally, if not the things that we can't necessarily control nationally and internationally, is we can promote community journalism that tells different stories. We're starting to see the emergence of that. And through the Community Foundation's work, through its food poverty network, we started telling different stories about people's circumstances to combat, for example, people's misunderstanding about why people find the need to turn up at a food bank and collect a food parcel. These things aren't enough in themselves. And I take your point about the strongholds or the columns in your life that have upheld your belief to stay away from the politics of division that upsets our communities and stops them from being peaceful and inclusive. I think what we can do is we can provide an extended family of community. So if even those who have not good family experiences, they know that there is a VCSE out there that's properly resourced that can provide that hand of friendship to help them build a safe and well life. I don't think we'll all have the answers within this community conversation, but sometimes it's good to have the rhetoric to think a bit more beyond this actual community conversation about how we go forward to do that. But I do think there are a lot of volunteering community groups who are now starting to tell different stories. And a small example is the Poverty Truth Commission, which will allow people voices around finding themselves in financial hardship and how things can be changed locally to address that. We're going to hold that thought there because I think that's an ongoing thing that we can look at in our future local UN summit under this global goal. And I'll move to our final question, which is, it's a biggie, and I don't expect us all to have the answers, and I expect 2030 will go whooshing by, but I hope we will get there in some way, shape or form. What is the panel's vision for Northamptonshire in 2030? What do you hope we can have achieved by then to build peace, justice and strong institutions for all local residents on our doorstep? Over to Hasna. Hasna, you're on mute.
Sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. It's the slogan of 2020 and 2021.
Yeah. My vision for 2030 is to build a stronger community for everyone, every ethnicity, every culture, literally everyone. Go through different grassroots, have a way we can change and let people think how they want to, that's fine. But main thing is understanding each other. We are all different colors. We all think differently. We all choose what we want to be, right? We choose what we want to become. And we need to keep it like that. But at the same time, we need to provide training, and the services needs to keep on going, continuous service. We can't provide a service for 1 year, 2 years, like how it is in projects and fundings, continuous service, because if we stop the service all of a sudden, we go back to square one, right? If we continue, we carry on, then I think we could build a very strong community together. But we need it to be together. It can't be just this organization and that organization and etc. But it needs to be done as together to build a strong community. And that means providing training, providing employment training, providing support, and basically I say keep maybe politics out of it more than anything else, and just understanding the community and respecting each other's values.
Thank you, Hasta. I think you made a really important point there about by 2030, we don't just need access to justice as well as peaceful and inclusive communities. In order for that to happen on the journey between this year and 2030, we need access to justice, the funding for communities to be properly resourced over the long term, and not that they're not to be favoured or preferred organisations and groups to do that work. And so I'm taking your point as well that in order to build around this global goal, we need to be really serious with substance around building meaningful partnerships for the long term to help achieve it, as well as making sure that everybody has an equal right to access employment, training, education, and support that they need to live a safe, peaceful and well life within Northamptonshire. Thank you, Hasna.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Danielle.
2030, I want to see an end to homelessness, an end to violence against women, an end to the climate emergency, an end to poverty. And these are all huge structural issues that need to be addressed. And I think the answers to a lot of those is about how leadership within politics, within the local authority, within our communities shapes our ideas and our lives and our relationships to each other. So I think I would be looking for some of that transformation that Hassan was talking about, where we don't fight against each other, but we look to support each other and develop much more close relationships of understanding. So people are no longer afraid of each other, and those people who want to get us to hate each other and who want us divided won't succeed, because we have become so strong. But I think dealing with those really fundamental structural inequalities is really important. I don't want that to be done to us. I want us to be doing it with everybody and doing it for ourselves, because it'll be the people doing it from the grassroots up that will have the best ideas, the most sustainable ideas, and we will be the ones who build what it is that needs to be built in the doing of that. I think it's entirely possible. These are man-made, I say that advisedly, man-made structural issues. We can unmake them and we can build a better world.
Thank you. You touched on a really important quote by Nelson Mandela about poverty being man-made and therefore being a political choice. And you touched on a really important point about the global goals, in that they're interconnected. So Global Goal 16, peace, justice and strong institutions, also relates to Global Goal 10, reduced inequalities, also relates to Global Goal 1, no poverty in this world, also relates to Global Goal 3, health and well-being. And I take your point that whilst we look to our global and national leaders through the varying summits that are happening to help address some of these urgent issues, there is a really important opportunity between now and 2030 for local people to be properly and actively listened to by local government to present some of the solutions. And your point about moving away from the politics of fear and how we within the voluntary and community sector can contribute to combating those who would divide us, and those who would stop us from having peaceful and inclusive communities. So by 2030, we'll be free from the politics of fear, and our global and national leaders hopefully won't have let us down. And we, the VCSE locally, will be part of that movement to ensure that happens. Thank you. Hassan.
Yeah, can you make sure that happens, please, Rachel? I'm going to hold you personally responsible if it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know, vision for 2030, I've got vested interest, I suppose all of us do. My daughter is 2.5, my son is 4 months old. And I want them to, be in a town that they love and that they enjoy, that gives them opportunity and all those things. A vibrant and diverse community that's open and accepting. Are they going to have racism at school? Don't know. I had some. The generation before me had a lot. So will there be the remnants of that for them? I don't know. I hope not. When they try to get work experience, will they get pushed back because their names are not English names? Don't know. It certainly happened to me. I remember trying to get work experience in a law firm and sent out about 100 applications, didn't even get a response. So what are their life chances going to be like in 10 years' time when they're trying to get work experience? So I want all those things fixed. A prosperous town with commerce and jobs, a town centre that's not just made up of vacant, shops or discount shops. Somebody where you want to go, because that's actually good for your physical and your mental well-being. A town that encourages good health, physical and mental. So those are the things that I want, not just locally, but nationally and globally. So unless you guys can resolve that, I won't be coming to the next meeting.
So there's absolutely no pressure. And as I started these community conversations, I have to take responsibility for some of the actions. But I think a really important point that you brought up there, Hassan, is thinking about what the world will be like for the next generation and what we can do between now and 2030 to ensure we make a better, safer, peaceful and inclusive world for our future generations, the younger people who are growing up now. And I think what I've taken away from that as well is about space again, physical space. In order for people to feel safe and peaceful and inclusive, we need to have towns, cities, villages and communities where people can take civic, cultural, inclusive pride in those areas and have opportunities for connection, meeting more people from a wide range of backgrounds, so they get to hear different stories, make friends from a wide range of backgrounds, and people feel safe to do so. And in that sense, that's how we break down again the politics of fear and the racism, which we currently see sadly being a massive scourge on our communities and society. And through that, I think the BCSE also has an important part to play to help build those community assets that allow for friendships across many different cultural and many different diverse communities to flourish, so that we work towards this global goal. So thank you, Hasna, Danielle and Hassan. This has been a really thought-provoking community conversation. I know it's just the tip of the iceberg. We will be having a local UN summit next year, where we will convene numbers of community groups from across the Northamptonshire voluntary community sector to come together across specific goals of interest to talk about these goals in more depth. But what we will do is, based on this community conversation, we will take away 4 actions that we will commit to as a community foundation, and we'll report back to you on that. But thank you for some of the key things that came out from this for me, particularly was about collaboration and partnership going forward to achieve this goal. The fact that we need to look to community leaders who take on issues, not just because they're fashionable, the flavour of the month, but because they will really, really make a substantial difference to making safe and well lives, thinking of refugees and migrants within our communities, that we can support and do some of the work to pressure local government to improve access to legal justice and ensure people get the support that they need and aren't held back simply by their access to justice being quality of experience based on how much they earn. Everybody has the right to equal justice. Also about providing the toolkits, support and welcome to a broad range of communities and having community assets where people can have a voice and platform from a range of communities so that they can take part in local democracy. Perhaps looking at projects which promote democracy within our communities so that people become aware of their rights and responsibilities, about human rights, about the history of human rights, and also about why it's important to support each other's human dignity. I also take away the points as well about building stronger communities through education, access to training, access to support that people need, and also in order to build safe spaces, telling stories that give us an understanding of a broad range of people's lives from different walks of lives, different life experience, so that we get to better understand the issues, problems or challenges that they face, so that we can better inform and pressure local government to make more improved policy that helps change those lives. Thank you all today for your time. There's going to be some challenging takeaways from this, but that's good because it's not the easiest of goals, and I think it covers a lot of other of the global goals as well. I wish you all safe and well. This will go out on social media, and we hope to get some further feedback from other voices on how to achieve this global goal.